Beth Miller is the founder of Wagtown, a charitable organization that helps communities become more dog-friendly. Her new book, Tucker Finds His Forever Home, was written to speak to children about dogs and their effect on our lives. The story is told through the eyes of a young pit bull named Tucker. It brings readers along a journey filled with many life lessons about self-worth, breed discrimination, safety, emotions, and bullying. 100% of the book's proceeds benefit animal welfare projects and programs that make the world a better place for dogs. In our interview, we discuss the book and the amazing work Wagtown is doing to enhance dog friendliness in our communities. All right, Beth, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm really excited that you're here, and as a dog lover, I'm really excited to talk about your book and your organization. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm always willing to talk about the book, obviously, but definitely always ready to talk about dogs. So I appreciate the fact that you have that disease also, dog loving.
I do. I end up talking about my dogs all the time and showing pictures when maybe it's not an appropriate time to always be pulling out my pictures. So I'm looking forward to it. And I want to start just by getting into some of the details from your book, Tucker Finds His Forever Home. I loved it. It's wonderfully written, beautifully illustrated. And I want to just go to the introduction of the book. You mentioned that dogs make the world a better place, and now it's time to make the world a better place for dogs. So first of all, yes, I love this. And I want to use this quote to allow you to introduce Wagtown and its mission to create dog-friendly communities and really the story behind the book and your organization.
Okay, all right. Well, it's been quite the journey, right, when you're trying to put something together like that. And one of the things that Tom and I, my buddy Tom, who my partner in crime here, we were looking at maybe moving. And so we typed into the computer, things that we wanted to have, like great local music and food, and dog friendliness was important to both of us. And so I looked for dog friendly cities in America, and it was 28.7 million hits. And so our first reaction was, it's everywhere. We can move anywhere and it'll be just like whatever, and we're from Ohio. So, really anywhere we would have moved probably would have been a little bit better, right? Because Ohio is just not that dog friendly compared to other parts of the country. I knew that we had some things that were dog friendly and we're not, but it looked to me through those results as though the results weren't really a reflection of where there's dog friendliness, but where people have said, oh, dollars follow dogs. So this is a very smart marketing technique, is to let people know that they're welcome. But then if you show up and if your dog is over 35 pounds, or if it looks a certain way, or, you have more than 3 of them, then it's like you literally can't live there. So it really makes you realize that dog friendly is incredibly hard to define. Because, for me to go to California, I'm in San Diego in Little Italy, and I knew that I would see the dogs better behaved around people because there were more people and there were more dogs. But what I wasn't thinking, for whatever reason, it just was out of my mind for some reason until then, is that the people were better. They knew how to walk around when their dog's around without being like, oh my gosh, can I have a selfie with your dog? And, it's like, they don't know my dog. Like, would you do that to a person? Probably not, unless you were like Tom Hanks, right? So there was this sort of disconnect between the dog's perfect world in their mind versus ours, but we're starting to look at them as children. So just like we did with the children in like the 90s to now, where it's you can do anything, right? And just kind of go for it. And I want to have you in karate and violin, and you're in destination imagination, and then you have so you're scheduled all the time to have a more enriched life. Well, now we have furry children, and now we're looking for increasingly more enrichment. And so I think that the difference there is, they bring things to our life, like, life-saving capabilities. We have a dog who's a flunky. He was going to be a service dog, but he didn't make it. So we adopted him. So he's fantastic. But, even with me, I have these headaches and things like that, he's never been trained for that. But he responds to me. He's responded to children with autism when he's been near them and they're having a little crisis moment. He didn't even have any training for that. And he just knows somehow that he can help. And just by touching that child, you could just see the moment evaporating. It was
Right.
wonderful to see that. And it's like, that's one dog, one day in one store in one city with, with one boy. But just that touch made a huge difference. And so when you take that and you multiply it by the number of dogs that are part of our lives, it's amazing when you think, wow, the potential there for our lives to be improved, for our communities to be improved. And it goes everywhere from economic development to animal welfare support. And along that scale, we need to look at the one side and say, wow, do we really give enough credit to what's out there and what's possible for us, right? Because people don't really care about this until it's about them.
Yeah.
Right. So now it is, they're like, oh, this does make my life better. And oh, this does enrich my life experience. And are you returning me favor?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it, is this, I guess, obligation, I think, grows as you have a dog longer and longer, that you feel this need to make sure that they're happy, which I think we did want that years ago, like when I was a kid, but it's a different kind of love your dog experience now. Yeah.
That's something that when you talk about how we view dogs, that I resonate with. I don't know about you, but it bothers me even when people refer to dogs as pets. Like, I don't view, they're like part of my family. Like I feel like the changing the way we view them is seeing them more as family members, as opposed to, like, I feel like a pet has I feel like it just belittles what they are. Like, they're part of your family, and I don't know. I don't, like, when I think of my dogs, I don't think of them as pets. I think of them as family members. And I think that shift in thinking is really important in how we respect dogs, and how I don't know, does it ever bother you that when people refer to them as pets? Or just like,
I at first I thought, I actually put a post in LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about this. And I put, because when I was younger, you owned a dog. Do you have a dog? And people say, do you have a dog? It's not, and they would have, like, do you have children? But we all know that's a different question. And so, it can be difficult to get to the right answer there. Have you found that to be the frustrating part?
Yeah, like, that's the frustrating part, is like, I don't like even the idea of a dog owner. Like, like you said, you have
it's like
children,
property then.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I think
it is abrasive, I think, especially when you consider that, if they weren't considered property or livestock, then they wouldn't be in puppy mills.
Exactly.
So, at what point do you say we're going to change our minds about whether a dog is owned or part of the family? But if you're going to say that about dogs, then are you saying that that's not true of cats? Are you saying that's not true of birds? Are you saying, so it may be that we're resisting it because we don't want to accept the fact that as a species, we really don't take care of anybody else but ourselves, right? We take. And so this is our opportunity to say, wow, things are awesome because of dogs. So how can I give back to that? How can I do something that would really make an impact on the lives of not just my dog, but dogs everywhere? And that's where some of the impetus for the book is, I had worked in conservation and restoration of forests and those kind of nebulous projects where they have a culture shift. And you can kind of see this transition where they did with recycling. Like when my son was in recycling, I'm making fun, but he was brainwashed about recycling, right? And then he comes home and I'm pressured or, bullied into recycling because I don't want to be like that mom that doesn't recycle, right? Because he's learning about how important it is, right? So I get shamed into recycling. And now though, you end up with 2 generations of people who recycle.
Yeah.
So fantastic. So I'm like, that's how we're going to, we need to raise more humane people. And so how do we get to them? We get to them through books and learning and curriculum. And so that's why I decided to dive in on that is, there's no other group of people that are just at that sponge level,
right,
and who also incur the most problems with bites. So it's like a double hit there.
So going back to your book, for those who haven't read it yet, in the book you meet Tucker, who's a pit bull, and he's scared and alone because he's abandoned from his family. And first of all, I loved the writing, the illustrations, like they're just wonderful and heartbreaking at the time when he's alone. I feel so bad.
Yeah.
But obviously being a pit bull mix, he faces discrimination and judgment, and that's the reason why he was abandoned, because of how he looks. So can you talk a little bit about like what is happening to dogs like Tucker and because of breed discrimination?
Sure, sure. It is a major problem. It is rooted in a horrible history of just violence with dogs. And so it's taking us, it's time to, kind of take the pendulum in the other direction. And what it's taking is people like you and like the book that talk to people about the importance of not judging a book by its cover. No pun intended. Boy, I got a whole lot of puns in here today. But, like, for instance, not to throw them under the bus, but in Boulder, they just came out in the newspaper. They were celebrating the fact that they had taken breed restrictions out of their city code. So I called them to find out what the deal was, because it used to be that if you took your pit bull mix or anything that looked like a pit to your vet, they were required to seize the dog and put it down.
It's terrible.
Yeah. So, and if you went to the vet, and it's like they've been caring for your dog all this time, or you get a new puppy. Can you imagine going to the vet and they're like, we have to take it and put it down? But it was really happening, that they were coming to homes and things like that. And I've heard all kinds of horror stories around that. So I thought, great. So I call out to the city and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be moving out there. I'm so excited. But my friend told me that I might not be able to live in the community because of my dogs. And she said, oh, that's probably not true. What kind of dogs do you have? And so I thought, well, this will be the trick question, right? I've got a Rottweiler, I've got a Husky, and I've got a Shih Tzu. So I'm figuring, before pit bulls came along, the Rottweilers and the Dobermans were the dogs we were supposed to be afraid of, right? So now you have this one of them that used to be the meanest dog, and now he's still in that category because he's black and tan, and people are afraid, right? So that one made it through. Huskies, they're like, oh, it's destructive, it's noisy, oh, they're vocal, and they're a Husky, right? So, that one, though, goes straight through. The Shih Tzu, obviously no problem. It's under 35 pounds. And, and I said, really? And I said, well, I think she said that she can't live there. And I said, and she said, well, that she must have a pit bull.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I said, well, what would I do if I wanted to have one? She said, well, they just took it away, so you can have one. But if you do, you are required to register your dog with the city. And they have to go, I think it's $75 to go and have this appointment. So you have to take off work or, whatever. And then they look at your dog for 45 minutes and make a determination as to whether or not they're a pit bull. If they are, then you have to register them as one. So now you have a financial penalty, a time penalty, and it specifically says that the guidance for choosing the dog, whether or not it's a pit bull, is by appearance only. So they're not looking at behavior. If the law was there and if the ban was there to control behavior issues, human and dog, then why is the decision maker on this one just looking at your dog?
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes no sense.
Isn't that the very definition of discrimination? Is looking at something and making assumptions? So yeah, so that one's near and dear to my heart. That's the thing. It's like dog friendly, right?
Yeah.
Are they dog friendly? They got rid of a breed ban. That's a plus. So they're moving in the right direction with that. But that's when you got to look in and say, well, where's the fine print? Right. In dog friendly in your city.
And I think in the story you do such a good job portraying like what these dogs go through who are abandoned because of that, and what part of that is through the writing and your illustrations. And I'm curious to ask what the process was like writing your first children's book, working with an illustrator, just a little bit of an author question beyond our dog talk.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for asking that question, because I'm always happy to talk about that too. Yeah, it was very interesting because the curriculum preceded the book. So I have a curriculum that's K through 4 that's available through PBS Learning Media. And as I was doing that, it was like this thing that kept popping up into our heads. It was like, this would be a great place for a book to accompany that curriculum and engage the kids with that. And then it was like, I'm struggling with, well, do I go into discrimination with this book? Do I want that to be my lead? And then when you're talking about the book, like, do I leave a pup tied up in a park, as the front page? Do I talk about the fact that they're lonely when they're there and they're afraid? But that's part of their journey. And that explains why sometimes their behavior is a little off, but they've been in a cage terrified. And then with Tucker, other dogs are leaving. and he's not. And he's hearing people say, and I'm, of course, giving them credit for being able to understand us, but he's hearing people say, we don't want that dog. It's mean. That's one of the pit bull mix. We don't want that. And so again and again and again, he's hearing things that are tearing down his self-worth. And so I thought, man, do I really want to put that into a book with little children?
Right.
But I thought, how else are we going to get past this if we don't say this is a bad thing? And look what can happen as a result of it. And obviously we can humanize that to all of us. So it's like, how can we put that thought in their head of, asking the question, right? Ask questions, don't make assumptions. And so then you get into the process of, how do I communicate this through words, right? And then my mom was a teacher. So she taught kids in LD and special ed for 37 years. So I can hear her in my mind, like, don't use these words, make sure you don't turn letters backwards. She always used to get so frustrated, right? So in my mind, I can hear my mom saying, like what to do from an education perspective. And then, you've got your heart factor, and the dogs that I've met that I've seen that have lived through some of these bad things that happened to them. And so I knew that I needed to write with emotion, because that's how I live my life. But I needed to find an artist that understood how you get emotion across. So I was actually on Facebook, and a friend of mine who has a diner posted that this girl named Erica Schindler had given him some original artwork, and he had it, hanging on the walls of the diner, and if anybody wanted to come in. And, and she'll tell you her genre is dark art. So her stuff is kind of creepy, like Tim Burton, but the eyes were something else. And it was every one of her pieces was something about the emotion through the piece, and something very simple, but it just was so emotional to look at it. So I reached out to her on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, have you ever done a children's book before? And she was like, no, I've always wanted to, but my art's kind of dark. And I'm like, I know it is, and there's this other great artist in town, Amy Collar Anderson, and her stuff is just amazing, but also has this sinister appeal to it. And I was like, well, why don't we just meet and we can try? And, so it was a matter of discussing the vision for the book and how we wanted to get the story across. And then it was a challenge for her of, she is used to original pieces, but when you do a book, it's like, does Tucker's coat match in all of the book pages, right? Does Lila look the same on each page? Does this make sense that the road goes this way, right? And then having to replicate that was a real experience for both of us, because I had not given art direction for the creation of illustrations for a book or written one, even though my background was ad agency, right? So I had some of the skill sets in there, but when you have so much heart and soul into it, and you're putting yourself out there in a book where you can fall flat on your face or you can make a difference. So you just have to kind of roll the dice. And luckily Erica said yes. And so we went on this several month journey of discovering who Tucker was. And do you want to see some early?
Yeah, I would love that. Yes.
That's great. Yeah, we really struggled with Tucker, right? We had to get Tucker right. So we've got, this is one of the original, and this,
I love Tucker.
There's the sadness, but this was
so
the original.
sad.
That was the first guy of Tucker. So, and that was when we started having the conversation. It's like, that's literally what the dog will go through.
Yeah.
But do we put that? Or do we
I
put
think it's so important that you include that, though, because it's important, like that message needs to be shared, even though it is a children's book, and it's hard to see, but it's something that has to be shared.
Yeah. And I struggled with that. And then, we had this opportunity though to say, okay, here's one reality is, he's run away, and, he found a warm place to be for the night. And so this is sort of sad in a massive way for me. But then you have this dream of what could it be like, right? So this is this didn't make it into the book, but this was sort of the concept of, you take a person and their dog, and what does the world look like when you're in there, is it someplace? And then you have some heroes in here, and it's been really interesting. And then they get into more of a fine tune, this was
a little toy that
and,
made him happy.
And there was the picture of him getting a bath. And so you see this sort of the joy in his face, and there's more hope to him, right? Because humans are taking an interest in, caring for him, and, so they pick him up in the alley, right? So there's this moment of transition, and then is trying to explain to them, like, where's he going? That's scary too. Like, I don't know where I'm going. So that was an interesting process to go through all of these. And then we had these bubbles of the idea of what does dog friendliness look like? Can you take your dog with you? Are they allowed to go on transportation? And that was hard to nail down
Yeah.
which illustrations we were going to go with, because it was like, can they go to this place? Can they go to this place? Is there an event celebrating this? What do the laws say? What do first responders do? Like all these ideas in the head of what is the dog's journey like that? And to your point, how deep do you go into the emotions versus the lesson, and to not let the reader, I guess, let the emotions take them away from understanding that there's a point to going through that first section of the book, which is about those tough questions and about those emotions that we need to learn to deal with.
Yeah. And one thing I want to touch on about the book next is, so obviously Tucker, he's at the shelter, he's getting passed up, and other dogs are getting adopted over him. And then eventually he meets Lila, and he's taken to a place where he'll be happy and where he could be loved. And she calls it the Wagtown community, obviously. And in this place, I was, really thinking about it. So it's not just a great place for dogs to live, but it's also a place where dog owners are responsible and dogs are treated like family, and everybody puts so much into caring for their dogs. Like they receive the appropriate training, they're socialized, they have their shots. And I think about this, and in the real world, there are a lot of people who do this, which is great, but there's also, I find there are so many people who, and I think this has happened also over COVID, people will get dogs on an impulse and not really know what they're doing. And I feel like there's a gap, and people don't fully understand the massive responsibility that it takes to responsibly raise a dog. And I think as a society, how do you think we could do a better job of relaying this message of responsible dog ownership? Because I think a lot of people just don't really understand what dogs need.
And that's definitely true. And I think there's a certain factor of everyone's dog is awesome or terrible, right? And there's no in between. We are very quick to argue about dog issues, over food, over training, any topic, and there's some way that you can disagree, just kind of our culture right now. But there are a lot of reasons, because people are so emotionally committed to that dog. Once they get into your life and under your skin, then it's kind of like somebody's picking on your kid, right? So you're like, well, no, I'm going to stick up for them, right? So it does become a little bit different. And I think part of the problem with that is that we have this Insta generation and Insta culture, and now an Insta world where we all want something and we want it now. And once we get it, we're not necessarily going to really water the flowers, so to speak. So it keeps growing. And that's where we wanted to kind of come in and say, I just finished, I'm not a singer, but I have a jingle. I think you're putting the link on there. I'm singing it and I wrote it, but I won't be getting any job offers for singing, that's for sure. But it was, again, and the name of the song is I Love My Puppy Every Single Day. And it was the same thing I wanted to do to show that. And so I'm so excited that you said that about that page, because that is what it should look like if we're going to expect a humane environment for them, if we're going to expect that there's going to be a positive impact on our economy from them, then we need to accommodate a culture that says, I'm going to take responsibility for my dog. I will tell you that I have traveled all over the United States and I've done all these interviews, more than 700, and I have never, ever seen a solution to pet waste management in terms of do people do it, pick up. And it's crazy to me that it's such a simple thing to do. Some people literally don't know you should do it, but I think everyone in the world listening, we've all at some point not picked it up, right? You either didn't have a bag, it was off on the trail, who's going to step in it, right? So we've all been there where we're like, am I going to pick it up? But when you think about dog friendliness, if you want it, then you have to live it.
Yeah.
We can't have dog friendliness if we don't have responsible pet owners. It's a deal killer.
Right.
We won't work with the city that has a breed discrimination law unless they're working with us to eliminate it. And you can't have dog friendliness unless people are willing to say, I don't know everything there is to know about training or food or where it's safe to go and what kind of equipment that I need. And so you need to sort of insulate the culture with access to things like pet retailers and a wide array of veterinary services and access to pet service providers, and then have the laws sort of embrace that culture and say that you're welcome here, that we care for you. If you look on most city websites, there's usually a list of what you can't do with your dog and the penalties for doing any of those things. And then any kind of, it's ordinance number, whatever, and you can go read it. But very seldom do you find a city that is like, we would love to see your dog in our town, including you. You can come too, right? But this is where the dog parks are. These are these great dog-friendly patios that are always a big hit. While you're in town, there are going to be 3 events for dogs. One's a 5K, another one is an adopt-a-thon, and the other one is an outdoor adventure festival where they're going to have events for dogs, right? That's a totally different tone than if you come here and you don't have a 6-foot lead on your dog, we're going to come and give you a penalty.
Yeah, the being punitive doesn't do anything productive.
Right. Yeah. Fear doesn't work in advertising.
No.
So I think that's the gap, is that we just need to kind of, I guess, what I call the dogification of America. It's slowly rolling in. And as you've seen, the concept of people saying that they own the dog versus they're my soulmate. I mean, there's a huge gap there. You actually fit into the 85 to 95% of people think that their dog is either family or their child.
Mm-hmm.
And really nobody is putting it in the ownership position. A friend of mine is a really well-known veterinarian, and she answered the poll with she owns a dog. And I thought, well, that's surprising, right? On the one hand, I thought, well, she sees it in a more clinical way. So maybe it is, dog ownership because she's familiar with that, nomenclature. But then I went back and I looked because I was going to see her at a conference, and I was going to say, I was fascinated with your answer because I get it on some level, but then I'm surprised because you're so enthusiastically into the pet industry. But then when I went back to look at it, she had changed her vote. So I know it was like, maybe she warmed up to it, or maybe she pushed the wrong button, but it was interesting to see that it skewed exactly like you just said, exactly like it did. And that's why we see books trying to help us understand dogs better.
Yeah. I love those. Anything I could do to learn more. One of my biggest wishes is I would spend any amount of money to truly know what goes through my dog's head.
Oh my gosh, you need to look up Talking with Dogs. It's Talking with the Dogs. It's Liz Murdoch, and she's a dog communicator. When we lost our Great Pyrenees, she was really helpful to me. And I wasn't sure if I believed in that stuff, from being an animal communicator, and especially he had just passed. But right out of the gate, she said to me through him, whatever you want to call it, 2 things that I don't know how. One of them was right out of the gate, Rocky wanted you to know that he was your dog too. Mm-hmm. And that was crushing to me, because I thought that means that I didn't love him as much as I could have. Mm-hmm. Because you don't love somebody else's dog like your dog. They're not in your soul like that, right? Yeah. And I think I held him at arm's length because he was Tom's dog.
Yeah.
I met him and he had Tom with Rocky already. And so it taught me this lesson with Sesto. I was, helping to get him ready to be a service dog. And I looked at him one day and I thought, I'm doing it all over again. Yeah. Here I am. A couple months later, we just had our heart broken, and I promised Rocky that I would never do that again. And here I am keeping this puppy at arm's length because I don't want to have my heart broken. Yeah. And I decided, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm going to treat him like he's mine, love him like he's mine, and lose him like he's mine. And it's been great. And then to be able to keep him, are you kidding me? So at that point, that's when that kicks in. It's like, okay, I love this thing so much that I'm going to cry in an interview. But what does that mean then? How am I going to take responsibility for all that love? And a friend of mine, Nancy, she used to teach responsible dog ownership classes in Long Island, and nobody, would come. They all thought that they were responsible. I taught a class, how to have the best manners in the dog park. Nobody wanted to come because nobody wants to admit, why would you show up and say I'm not great at the dog park. I have bad manners at the dog park, right? So we need to, I think, collectively say we don't know it all, especially when it comes to dogs, and not only their impact on us, but our capacity for a better impact for them.
What do you think are the biggest factors that make it challenging for communities to become more dog friendly? Do you think, I mean, obviously, I think there are legislative issues. I think local laws could be a big challenge. Do you
Mhm.
think the biggest challenges are those legislative issues, or do you think it's just more the cultural change is the biggest challenge to address? Maybe a little
Well,
bit
I
of both.
think well, yeah, and I think it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing. I do ask people sometimes when I did my research, a lot of that was about discovering whether change in their community happened organically or if
Right.
it was something that they planned for, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And what I found was that it was this hybrid where most of the communities, it just kind of happened on its own. And like most things in dog friendliness history, it's really this nudge or pushing your envelope a little bit on the part of dog owners to say, hey, is this okay? Hey, is this okay? Can I do this? And then entrepreneurs saying, wow, there are that many people. It's $102 billion last year in the pet industry. I'd like to pivot right after COVID. I'd like to pivot. I have an idea for the pet industry. Bam, there you have another, another way to do that. So that affects jobs, that affects the economy. And I think that once people start to make that connection between the economy and the health of the community and the safety of the community and responsible dog ownership, that's a culture change.
Yeah.
Now, I think the fact that we have rules and laws like what they did in Boulder, they kind of changed things and it was a shell game kind of thing to some extent. But that's another example of, are you planning to be truly dog friendly, or are you addressing and reacting to specific situations? So when I was in Little Italy in San Diego, that's where I had that aha moment, right? I met with Chris, what was his last name? And he was with New City America, and they had done a master plan for just that section of San Diego and call it Little Italy. And they just did this great interpretation of Italian culture. The restaurants reflected that. It was amazing. And one of the things that he mentioned to me was that dog friendliness was a part of their plan. That it wasn't that, well, let's make it dog friendly. It was like, no, what would that mean? What does that infrastructure entail? What does that mean in terms of how we program our community? What does that mean in terms of how we train our first responders? And so it really needs to be a systemic change. That's why, with Wagtown, my nonprofit, it's about diving into all of those segments with everything that I've learned. It's not really much worth if I get hit by the Purina truck tomorrow, so it's all gone. So how can I take all that information about dogs and their lives and the way that we can kind of make some shifts in our legislation, in how we handle them with retail and veterinary care, and the attitudes have to change. And we have to be willing to say, I don't know everything about this.
Yeah.
And will you show me what you know? One of the wonderful things that I had happen to me was in 2021, I did a thing called 52 Weeks of Making a Difference. So I live interviewed people who were making a difference for dogs and to inspire people on how they might do that for their dog or for dogs in their community. And I mean, can you imagine how wonderful that was every week to talk to somebody who was making a difference for dogs?
Yeah.
I mean, it was helpful for them and their businesses or whatever they were, working on with their initiative. But wow, it's just, I got to talk to the most fascinating people, and all of them were leading with passion. And it was just a really, really wonderful experience, especially when I knew that that passion was going into dogs.
And I think what's really interesting about increasing dog friendliness beyond making it a better place for dogs to live and a better place for people to live, I think what I'm also fascinated by, and Wagtown discusses this a lot, is the economics of it. I mean, I always had an idea in my head that dog-friendly communities would be more economically vibrant, but I was just looking through your website. It's fascinating. Could you talk a little bit about the positive economic impact of having authentic dog-friendly policies in communities and what it looks like?
Sure. I actually got a call from someone in Nevada not too long ago. She was doing a PhD project where they were looking at the impact on public health and its relationship with dog friendliness. Because if you figure you have a community that is up and active, you got to take the dog out, take them for a walk, and then mental health is being addressed because of the effect that dogs have on us. So then you're looking at, okay, how many sick days are there not there? How many people didn't get ill because their immune system was reinforced because they had that extra activity? And then when we take a look at our workforce attraction and retention, people are literally willing to give up a week's vacation if they can take their dog to work instead. If they give them the choice, they're picking the dog over the vacation. Pretty impressive. So it feeds into where do I want to work and where do I want to stay. I've talked with people who worked someplace that was dog friendly, and then after COVID, they found a different position. Their dog's not welcome, and they're starting to see a change in behavior for both of them. The human is used to having that there, and the office is used to having that there, and now it's gone. So people are leaving jobs because they can't bring their dog, or they're doing their jobs more poorly because productivity goes up. So if you can hire people that are easier to grab a hold of, you can pay them less to work there, like literally, because they're willing to give up vacation time. And then they show up more often, they're much more productive. All of those things mean a better bottom line for you. So you're going to look at it that way. Chewy came into our community because we had infrastructure that would support that, but they also look at, what does your community look like? There are major corporations that are putting dog friendliness as a checkbox on where are we expanding to. So if you want to be competitive in growing your community in a planned way, and you already know that you have this huge portion of people who view these creatures as an important part of our lives. And even if you don't own one, the ramifications for the community are, limitless when you really tap into what dogs are capable of. So when you put in workforce development and attraction, and you've got travel and tourism dollars, I think it was 38% of people now travel with their dog with them. So, and they're going to say, where can I go with my dog right when they get out of there? So if your travel and tourism people are on point, then your Convention and Visitors Bureau knows what's happening, where you can take your dog. And they're there to say, welcome to our community. Wouldn't you love to live here? Wouldn't you love to spend here? Wouldn't you love to, whatever, right? So it's changing the entire brand value proposition of a community when you really mean it. And so I think it is important for people to start saying, let's plan for this to be a part of our economic strategy. Let's plan for this to be a way that we address mental health. Let's plan for this to be a part of the way that we connect the dog owners with law enforcement and first responders to address lots of issues there, right? So it's all doable, but it's a big lift and we all have lots to do. So what really is going to require is people just, watch one less Netflix special and, do a couple of hours of work that will help us get there a little faster. And there's so much that can be done.
Right.
There are a lot of marbles that can be picked up and run with.
Yeah, and beyond economics, and you talk about this a lot with your work, is that it also benefits every aspect of community life. Like you said, they're healthier, they're safer, they're more diverse, they're more welcoming. I mean, I know myself, like I've been working from home since the pandemic, and I have my dogs with me all day, and I know mentally, like it's just so great for me that, like, if I ever need to get up, go for a walk, play with the dogs a little bit, like just mentally, it's been really helpful for me. And you can see, like, when you have communities where it's accessible and friendly, it makes such a big difference. So yeah, I think the work is amazing, and I love how there's so many things you're doing to push for I love the dogification of America. You have a lot of projects. One I would love to just talk about on this interview is the Smart Dog Park. I don't know if you want to share anything about that, but I think it's an amazing project. Would love to hear a little more.
Yeah. Smart Dog Park is actually a reaction to one of the trends that I saw, which is that they have a lot of problems. A lot of the complaints about them are legitimate. A lot of the praise about them is legitimate. But there's a fear factor now, and it's like you have the myths and the facts kind of thing happening there. But one thing that I noticed is that if you want to build one, it's difficult to find out how to get everything, or who to ask. I did a research project not too long ago and found that number one was land. Obviously, where do I stick it? And number two was finances. But number three was subject matter expertise. And so we were volunteering at an event where they wanted to make it dog friendly. And I ran into the village president for a local community here. And he said, well, how are we doing with that? And I'm like, you could be better. They build themselves as this incredibly welcoming community, all perspectives, all people kind of thing. And I said, but you're not really saying, come on in, we're going to be the place that's going to make you happy for you and your dog. And it's kind of, sort of rubs against your brand a little bit.
Yeah. And
I said, but you have, I'm sure, other things to look at, right? Next day, guess what's on the agenda for the village council meeting?
Dog park.
And so I went back and I looked. They had tried 11 times in 10 years to build that dog park.
Wow.
And every single time that they stopped, it was because they didn't have any idea how to do one. And then nobody knew. And so it was like, okay, well, let's call because we have this benefactor who wants it to happen. He found the perfect space when he was with his dog, Betty. And so, Richard and Johnny and I get together, and it was like when you have people there that are from Public Works and Village Services, and you have a benefactor who's also a dog lover and very well connected in the community of spreading the word and getting people excited. And then when you pour the gasoline of, subject matter expertise on that, we just went bonkers with ideas, and it was just fun to work in that space and to help really drive home the process that we were going to. I developed a system where it was safety was considered, that manners was important, awareness, not just when you're in the park, but of the park and what the expectations are, responsibility. We just talked about responsible dog ownership, but also responsibility about other people's things. And then training. And I'm not just talking about dog training, I'm talking about training your staff and training the community, about like when I talked in Little Italy about how people are sort of trained to not request a selfie with your dog. And
Yeah,
so
right.
if we can get that training done for people and for dogs and for businesses to understand the business impact of that, so they want to add it to their business, that's a revenue discussion, right? So we don't see dog parks as a revenue generation stream in our communities generally, unless that's their business model. So it's kind of helping those people put those pieces together so that they can understand, oh, that's how this could affect my business. And oh, this is how we would make lives better for dogs. And that dogification of America is just a reflection of that feeling of, it's a family member for me. I have a better mental life. I have a
Right.
better physical life. I feel companionship. And we talk about dogs having separation anxiety all the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, now we are.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go to work and we couldn't bring them. So now we kind of see how it feels. And I think that's what we were trying to get through with Smart Dog Park was, if it's a problem, if there's no formal opinion on expertise like veterinary or behavioral that's brought together so that people could come into some kind of ecosystem where they could learn about it, they could find access to the materials, they could get discounts, the innovations in dog park technology or processes or whatever could be discussed there, and we could tackle big projects like waste management. And so that's what I created. I'm like, let's not walk away from this problem. If everybody's saying, where's my dog park? I want to say, where's my smart dog park? I want to know that your safety, manners, awareness, responsibility training is smart. I want to know that everything you thought about in the land, just safety in the land. What was it used before? Was there anything dumped there? Have you had the soil tested? Is there anything that would be oversprayed from the farm that's nearby? Is there a water retention issue? What was the turf there? When do you drain, and that's just the piece of dirt you're going to stick it on. Right. So are you considering safety with your programming? Are you trying to train people and dogs and the community and everything that goes along under the word training, right? It's such a broad concept, but that's great because then we can say, we've got so many topics to discuss here. And to your point, when you get the dog, you start to realize that they're like an onion, right? Like the ways that you can care for your dog, it's like peel that layer away and you see, oh my gosh, there's something even better in there, right? And you peel that away and you're like, wow, they're enriched. I'm happier. This is awesome. You peel another layer away. And then you look to your right and your left and you're like, other people are taking care of their dogs in a better way.
Yeah.
And you peel a layer off and you're like, oh, we have a dog park that you feel safe there, that the user experience matches my expectations, right?
Yeah.
So the user experience expectation right now is it's kind of a crapshoot.
Mhm.
Maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be dangerous. Products are being invented to protect dogs in all kinds of interactions. And instead of us saying, let's take a look at the space of interaction. Does it need to be 1 acre with the square around it with a vestibule and now you've got a dog park? What if you're an artsy community? There's a 42-acre dog park in Redmond, Washington, and it's amazing, but it wouldn't fly in New York where I saw another dog park, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
One's a built environment and one is a natural environment. Both of them magical, but that answers the question of what's the perfect dog park?
Yeah.
And I would say, well, show me your community. Show me what the values are for your community. What do you celebrate? What's important to your community should be expressed in that space. And should it be used just for a dog park? Should it incorporate art? should music or sound in some way or colors be a component of creating vibrancy there? What are you doing to bring people into the community, even if they don't have a dog? What about putting bleachers up at your dog park? People love to watch dogs. They can come for lunch.
They do.
I know. I mean,
Make people happy.
just so much stuff you could do, right? Pavilions for an acoustic guitar in the corner at sunset. I mean, that doesn't sound like a dog park, does it? Sounds like you're at a pavilion somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, then put one there, right? It's just like we just need to go like shake it up, pull it apart, and then pick out all the really winner ideas, the things where we have connections, resources, time, talent, and treasure, put all those things together. And that's what I'm trying to create with Smart Dog Park, is that it's not a dog park creation, it's a dog park expert creation.
Yeah.
So we're training people. I'm basically taking what I know and putting it into a course where you can get certified and that you have access to all these resources 24/7, 365. And the outcome, in my vision, is that we start to expect more. We start to understand the other person's perspective, because the dog owners want this, and maintenance doesn't understand that to some extent. And maintenance wants this, and the dog owners aren't responding. And so how do they come together, right?
Yeah.
How do we have those people plan together? Well, what if you could plan it with them and they were from all over the world?
Right.
Right. So that's what we need to do. We need to come together and we need to fix the problem or provide better solutions instead of just saying, I don't take my dog there.
Well, I'm going to let this be my formal request to have a smart dog park in the Philadelphia suburbs, because I feel like
I can make that happen. You know how?
My community would love that, and I would love that, especially.
Would you really?
Fun. Oh my goodness.
It can be fun. And well, what we need to do is get you certified. It'll be fun to have an expert out there.
We'll talk.
I'm the teacher, so it can't be that bad.
Exactly.
Right?
No, it'll be fun. I appreciate so much of your time. I want to leave you with I have one more question, and then I'll give you the floor if there's anything else you'd like to say. But I'm just curious, since you started this since 2016, just if you can touch on, it's kind of a two-part question, the biggest challenges you faced and the biggest wins for you in Wagtown.
I think that the biggest challenge is that it's such a big concept.
Yeah.
And I come from a very fast-paced career world where you turn things around on a dime and you have to think conceptually. And I'm not good at slowing down to explain myself and help people understand the vision in the way that I need to be, especially when it's like I'm all of Wagtown and I'm all of Smart Dog Park. So I have 1099 people work with me and I have volunteers that work with me. And so, we get the work done collectively. But the challenge there is even to explain to someone what's dog friendly, because that's the whole premise of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So if I can't explain to you what dog friendliness is, then how do I talk to you about curriculum? How do I talk to you about the Wagtown Dog Trail? Yeah. How do I, it just goes on and on. So that's been challenging. I've had people make assumptions about me that I just didn't want to work, or I just like dogs. I just want to take my dog everywhere, or that I was taking advantage of the situation. Somehow I was taking advantage of people by not working, right? And so if you talk to any entrepreneur or author or nonprofit organization owner or runner, there's a good word for an author, someone who's running a nonprofit organization, they can tell you that the work is there and you
kind of work. It's nonstop.
It's nonstop, and you really have to start with the vision. I have this picture of my old dining room wall, and there's a Post-it note in the middle, and then Post-it notes all around it. And the middle Post-it note says dog. And then I went out from there. It's like family, neighbors, school. It goes all the way out to like the CDC and the Space Force, right? It's everything. And then I realized that the drawing was correct, but the right way to do it is to start on the outside. Yeah. Like you talked about legislation, right? There are some big boulders that we need to move so that we can get down to the sand of what color do I want my dog's collar to be, and can I get it in my town, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all the way from that microcosm to realizing that if we all were doing a little bit of this and people were getting certified and then building better experiences and breeding more safety and manners and responsibility and awareness, all those things would be there on an elevated level. And we'd have people who would also champion that. I think that's how we get there. And it feeds directly into the Wagtown vision of more authentic and responsible dog-friendly communities.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's when you have such a big task, it's starting from the outside is the perfect way to go about it. And
Yeah.
I
I
love,
would say, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would say I love the work you guys are doing. And I think don't let people judge, because people could be,
I know. Well, I will tell
you
you,
know
I
what?
did a video of gratitude a couple of years ago. I think it was in 17 or 18. And one of the things that I gave thanks for in that was the people who have been challenging me on that. I'm one of these people that if you want me to do something, then just tell me that I can't.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of motivating. And in terms of the positive experiences that I've had, someone recommended that I read a book called The Power of Pull. And it was all about serendipitous moments and kismet and just things that happen. And I really did feel like I jumped off a cliff when I went to do this adventure, but having that mosh pit experience of people like you reaching out to me and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. It touched my heart. It touched my pocketbook, whatever it was that drew you to what we're doing. And I want to help you. And it's been, I mean, we have a bucket in the kitchen because the first win, so to speak, that we had with Wagtown years ago, we had a bottle of champagne. And so it became this tradition. And at this point, we're going to be alcoholics by next week because it's really starting to gather steam. And for some reason, things like the Wagtown Dog Trail, which is more of a tactile experience, you can touch it, you can feel it, you know what it is. And the book is, you know, you get a book, right? Then we can start to have conversations about conceptual changes and attitude changes and then behavior changes. And so when I start to see that happening and I start to see the reaction elicit the response that we wanted to, and we start to see people leaning into, maybe this is important. When I start to see those indicators, that is so motivating to me. And when I get a call from somebody like you, letting me know that I can share my message with that many people, it's another reason for a champagne bottle. I mean,
I'm glad I can
I'm so
contribute
grateful for this. Yeah.
No, those early wins are the best, and you'll see they'll continue to grow. And
oh yeah, it's almost speeding up. It's out of
Yeah.
control right now. It's like, how can this many wonderful things, you know, that category, how can it grow all of a sudden? It's like, you know, it's been this process where I have those great moments, but for something, I don't know if it's COVID and everybody came out wanting to be helper. I don't know. It's been wonderful to see it. So
Do you have any projects in the works right now that you'd like to share? Any final things to share with readers and listeners?
well, definitely to check out the jingle.
Okay, yes, I will
Don't
share
be
the
too
jingle.
critical because it's pretty good. I really would like to know what people think of it, right?
Okay.
Because I've never written a song before, and it's just, you know, rights-free music that I have behind it. And so I'm just putting it out there. I want the kids. We have an event with the book actually on December 6th in Ohio at the Washington Centerville Library System, if anybody's in that area, at the Woodburn branch. And we're going to teach the kids a song and do a sing-along, and then we're reading the book, Tucker Finds His Forever Home, and then we're doing these murals where the kids are going to write letters of thanks to the humane organizations that will be there that help rescue pit bulls and pit type dogs to find them forever homes. So we're excited about that. So if you're in the area or feel like traveling to Ohio,
Maybe I'll hop on the turnpike, just head west.
Absolutely.
And,
I know where you can stay, and we built a dog park in our backyard.
oh, perfect.
So there's that. Bring the dogs.
Exactly. I'll bring my dogs. A dog friendly.
Yes, our house is dog friendly.
Exactly.
And we mean it.
Well, thank you so much. And for those listening, please remember that you could purchase Tucker Finds His Forever Home on Bookshop, anywhere you could buy books, and 100% of the proceeds are donated to dog and animal welfare to make the world a better place for dogs. So Beth, thank you so much. I love this. I love your message. I love your mission. I love the book. This was great.
Oh, great for me too. Thank you so much.
Of course. Take care.